Greetings IB artists, it's a rainy day today and I've got tons of marking. Yay! Said no teacher ever. So today I'll be talking to you about first of all, I have to make sure that everyone's asleep. And even then, we might be interrupted by my one-winged dove, Shanti, who is, prone to joining in. So today I thought I would talk you through how I mark the IB exam. We do this online. So as some of you might be aware, you upload all your work and then we see it on our screen and we basically go through each piece and we give you a mark. So we only get to see the exam or component number 3, which means that we're looking at your work. And we're also looking at your comments for each work, where you're telling us what materials you used, what the work is about, the dimensions, of course, and we get to see it. We need a good photograph of your work, and we're reading your curatorial rationale as well. Okay? So I think this will be helpful for you to kind of see how your work is received on the other end, right? So as I started to say, marking is generally speaking not a teacher's favorite thing. Generally speaking, all the teachers I know anyway. So it is something that requires focus and it is laborious. It can get very boring sometimes. And the reason why teachers do it is because obviously it's a little bit of extra money and we all know that teachers are not well paid. It is also, I would say for me personally, the best way to learn about how to be a better teacher. I believe that I became much better once I've started marking the IB exams. It is really important that you understand the frame of mind of the examiner. So the average examiner, I think, is kind of marking between 50 to 70 candidates. And that's a lot of concentration and a lot of time. And I will show you why. You'll kind of follow through my process with me. And it is really important that you understand that your job is to make our job as easy as possible. And by that I mean uploading good photographs. These are just the basics. Good photographs are essential, that you upload them the right way around. Yes, we have a tool where we can kind of, rotate your picture, but it is time consuming and it's annoying, okay? Just these basics should really kind of help whoever's looking at your work to kind of be generous. I mean, not that it's going to sway the examiner, obviously. That's just. I'll just say this for the marks that you're getting. We all have to be qualified every single year. So first we qualify to be an examiner anyway, and like I said, you don't qualify once and you're an examiner for life. You qualify every single year. And while we're marking, so once we get the qualification, we start marking. Every kind of out of 10, I would say you get 1 or 2 seeds. Seeds are samples that have already been marked by the IB, and they're used to compare to the marks that the examiners give. So this way there is a very kind of tight control over the grades that the candidates get. Again, they're constantly ensuring that your marks are as accurate as they can be. Okay, so don't be too worried about, oh well, this person may not like my work. It's not like that at all. We are closely following the criteria, the criteria descriptions, and we're constantly being monitored. Okay, so that's just like a little introduction into what I do. So the first thing I look at basically is I click on the exhibition photographs, right? And that gives me a very good idea of, first of all, the kind of holistic impression of your exhibition. And I'm taking in things like how much work there is, the scale of the work. I'm not looking too much at details, but I get a certain kind of sense of the level the level of the skills involved. I'm looking at what media you're using. Is there a variety? Another thing that I'm looking for in work is the level of complexity. Is there a sense of the candidate really pushing themselves, really investing themselves in the work and in their own growth as artists? This is very important. And you can kind of gauge that just from an overall look at the work. Of course, some pieces will be better and some possibly stronger just because you've done this over the 2 years. But as long as there is growth and a sense of risk-taking and tackling challenges, that's fantastic. That's what I look for. I'm also looking at the way you've set things up. So I'm enlarging the view of the exhibition. With this one, I have to rotate this one. I can rotate them, but I'm just gonna be kind of looking, that's already causing a pain in my neck, just saying. So I'm just kind of looking at the two photographs that you have to kind of include of your exhibition. Okay, great. And then while I've got everything nice and large, I just scroll through each individual piece. So I am getting a sense of, I'm looking at the details now. So the texture, the mark making, the application of the media. I'm looking at formal elements, of course. And of course I'm looking at, how well each piece is executed. Right, so I've got a pretty good idea of this person's work. I just quickly look at the exhibition photos again, okay. And then I will actually click on each photograph of each piece to then read what you have written about that specific photograph or work. So I'm looking at the title, I'm looking at the medium. When you're listing the medium or media, make sure that you don't just put mixed media, because sometimes, again, I'm looking at photographs, I can't really tell what it is. It's better if you are actually specific and you're listing the media. That's quite helpful. And then I'm looking at the dimensions so that I have some kind, I can visualize how big something is. And then I look at what you've written up on the feel that you are given. And I'm looking at how well you're expressing yourself. What is the work about? What are you exploring in each piece? This is a point where being completely, when it becomes just something that is personal only and is not actually giving me a lot of information about a piece, it's not necessarily helpful. I've talked about being too confessional before. You can watch that in my video, which is called How to Prepare for IB, I think it is. But the reason why I'm saying is because what I'm looking for is what specifically were you exploring in this piece. It is not so much about your mood or what because people think, oh, well, I have to communicate what I was intending with this piece. That's fine, as long as you kind of keep it focused on your artwork, focused on exploration or whatever it is you're experimenting with or exploring or discovering or developing. That's what I need to know. Not so much, oh, well, I've recently moved from another country, and of course that's important. However, make sure that I have everything that is really, really kind of crucial to expressing everything I need to know as an examiner. And what I need to know as an examiner is how you have responded to the criteria. So that's really important. Talk about the criteria, address the criteria when you're talking about each piece. Now, there is a certain amount of words. I don't have that information right here, but you can find out when you're uploading your exam and you're writing about each of your pieces. There is a word count that you need to stick to. And I say this because if you go over that, it is just simply cut off. I don't get to see the ending, right? So make sure that you are within the word count for each comment on each photograph or each piece, photograph of your piece, okay? So, and then for the curatorial rationale, it is the same. We are not allowed to kind of continue reading after, whether it's 400 word count for the SL or the 700 word count for the HL, and apparently we just stop reading after that. Yeah, I mean those are the instructions. Okay, so that's just for you to know. So here I'm looking at the photograph. Sometimes I will generally click on each photograph to see as much detail as possible. And again, if I'm trying to zoom in and the image is just kind of getting more and more pixelated, I don't get to see much, because texture is important. Everything's important, right? So this is kind of like, I'm just going to say, initially, as an examiner, I would go and visit a school. I would actually see the work in person, and I would get to talk to the artist. However, this is obviously quite expensive and time-consuming, etc. So this has now been replaced by examiners all over the world doing this online. Okay? So that's already a compromise. You need to understand that I need to get as much information about your work through the pictures that are uploaded, and that's it. I don't get to talk to you, and I don't get to see the work in person. So make sure that you do the very, very best you can to ensure that I get a really good idea of what your work is about. On the other extreme, do not try to Photoshop your work or do any kind of manipulation, because first of all, it's not allowed, and second of all, it is not an accurate representation. You may possibly confuse the person even more. So stay away from any digital manipulation to the photographs. The photographs have to be well taken. I might have to talk more about photography and how to take good photographs in a later video, where I will be talking generally about photography. But generally speaking, try and have even lighting all over the piece that you're photographing. So it's probably a good idea to photograph outside, okay, without any leaves in the way, don't have a mottled kind of lighting. Make sure that the angle is not distorted. So pay attention to the angle of the piece that you're photographing. You may need to kind of put it upright somewhere and be as parallel to it as possible, so that your work is straight up and your camera is really kind of parallel to that. That way you won't get distortion. If you're trying to photograph a work of art on the floor and you're standing over it, make sure that the shadow doesn't fall on it. The other thing that I want to talk about is, with each piece, under each photograph of a work that you have done, you have the option of including a couple of additional photographs in which you can include details. So for example, if you've got one work, you submit that, but you can actually have additional photographs that really zoom into the work, so that the examiner is able to see the details. And that's a great idea. Again, it works if it's a good photograph, which when zoomed into is clear. If the zoom is pixelated, you've lost your opportunity. Also, for some reason, I'm not sure why people do this. Possibly they want to make it look like there's more work there, or I'm not sure what they're thinking, but they tend to kind of upload the same photograph, let's say 3 times. So it's one work and you've got 1 photograph, 2 photographs, 3 photographs of the same work. I mean, there's absolutely no benefit in that. Make sure that you're following the instructions when you're uploading all your work. That ensures that everybody's happy. It's all common sense, but what I see is that a lot of people just ignore this stuff, and this is really important. This is your only way to really kind of show off your work in the best light possible and as accurately as possible. So taking photographs and uploading photographs is a really important job in component 3. Okay, so blah blah blah. I will now go through each piece and read about it, and then I go back up and I look at the curatorial rationale. So I click on that, I enlarge it, and again you are given a chance to really kind of solidify and somehow integrate all the work that has been going on over the 2 years of IB. So this is, you know, this is a great opportunity to be eloquent. If you are an international student, you are absolutely not being marked on your English. This is not what we do. However, I will say this: if it is really difficult to understand, then you are taking a risk. So I would really recommend that you start your curatorial rationale really early, that you adjust it, and not before the 2nd year of IB, because I think you need that summer to really kind of catch up with what you're actually doing and what you need to focus on in the 2nd year. But I'll be talking more about that in the future. But basically, your curatorial rationale is again a synopsis or a summary of everything that you've been doing. It would be great if you could start the curatorial rationale early enough so that you can really spend some time reading it over, improving your phrases or expressions, and using vocabulary that has to do with, that is closely connected to, again, learning about art, such as, you know, the elements and principles of art. That's a really good starting point. And also, you know, vocabulary is great because it helps you to express yourself as specifically as you possibly can. You know, you're trying to describe a journey that you've taken for 2 years in words, which is not easy. So give yourself plenty of opportunity to develop the curatorial rationale into a very kind of clear, concise, focused piece of writing. Remember that although you are discussing all criteria, the A, B and C criteria of the IB visual arts in Criterion D when you're talking about your work, know that Criterion A and Criterion D are closely linked. So do talk about how you see your work as being a coherent body of work. You're focusing on the body of work that you are displaying. You are discussing the relationships between the different pieces of work that you have done over the 2 years, and you're then carrying those relationships into the way you have curated the exhibition. So how and why did you set up the exhibition in the way that you have? No tea, no brain. So I am reading your curatorial rationale now. It's nice and enlarged. I will go back through all the photographs as they are now enlarged, and I'll just kind of remind myself of what your work is like now that I've just read the curatorial rationale. Once I've done that, I go back up and I read the teacher's comments. Your teacher will give you a mark for each criterion, and they will comment on each mark that they've given. So I'm looking at their comments, how they've justified the marks that they've given, and then once I've done that and I'm kind of quite satisfied that I've looked at everything, read everything, I then start allocating the marks. Right, so this is what I use for marking your exams. This is from the IB Visual Arts Guide, which I think you can get through your teacher or your IB coordinator at your school. And this is basically a kind of a matrix for the third component, which is the exhibition. So I have bands here for each of the criterion. This is A, B, C. These are the different levels. So if you're right at the top, it means that you have achieved a minimum kind of level. Middle is average or adequate, and then the last one is fluent, and you've achieved basically a very good level in terms of answering the criteria. And over here is the Criterion D, which is for SL is a little bit more lenient. For Criterion D, the HL students need to include the artists who have influenced them. The artists who have taken them up surprising avenues. That way you're showing that you're learning, and you're showing that you have taken up challenges that were presented to you while you were developing the work. I hope this has been useful. I would love to hear from you. I really hope for this channel to be a discussion, and that I can actually help you with any questions they might have. I know that I've jumped the gun a little bit because I'm kind of talking about how your work is marked, and I've actually been, in my videos anyway, I've been really kind of just looking so far at how to prepare for IB and what choices to make before you start the course. So you'll have to kind of, follow me along, and soon I will be, talking about the actual IB course. I'll be telling you a little bit about how I organize the 2 years in terms of projects and where you need to be at each kind of point, roughly. And also we will be going into the criteria and how to best answer criteria, etc., etc. So that's all coming, don't worry. I did this video just because this was the time when, it was an opportunity to show you how I actually mark the exams every year. Okay, so hopefully this has been helpful. You know what to do, you know how this works. So the liking, the sharing, the notification bell, etc., etc. That would be fantastic. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'll see you. Best of luck.